I sat in our living room, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, had just told me over the phone that I wouldn't be joining the family trip. "You'll be staying home because it's not enjoyable when outsiders are around," she said with a tone that stung. As she mentioned something about bringing back souvenirs, her voice dripped with sarcasm. The call ended abruptly, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I looked around, feeling out of place in the house that was supposed to be a temporary refuge. When David and I married, I never imagined that living with his parents would be so challenging. But after our apartment got damaged, his mother, Eleanor, insisted we stay with them. At first, it seemed like a good idea, but I quickly learned that her kindness was a mask for her controlling nature. Every day with Eleanor was a test of patience. She had a way of making me feel small, questioning my every move, from how I cooked to how I cleaned. It was exhausting, trying to live up to her standards, knowing I would never meet them. And David, he just stayed quiet, caught between us. I remember how different things were when David and I first met. We worked together and slowly became friends, and then more. He was different then, more assertive, more present. But living with his parents changed him, or maybe it just showed a side of him I hadn't seen before. I always knew that Eleanor preferred her son over anyone else, but I never thought it would affect me this way. I tried to fit in, to be the daughter-in-law she wanted, but nothing seemed to work. The more I tried, the more she pushed me away. Now, sitting here, feeling like an outsider in what was supposed to be my home, I realized that something had to change. I couldn't keep living like this, always feeling unwanted and unappreciated. As I put away the suitcase I had started to pack for the trip, a sense of determination filled me. Eleanor may have won this round, but I wasn't going to let her dictate my happiness. I had to find a way to stand up for myself, to show that I wasn't just an extension of her family, but a person with my own worth. As I put away my suitcase, I couldn't help but think back to how different life was when David and I first met. We worked at the same company, in different departments, but our paths crossed often. It started with casual conversations by the coffee machine, which turned into lunches, and eventually, dates. David was charming, kind, and he made me laugh. It was easy to fall in love with him. We got married 3 years ago, and at first, our life together was everything I had hoped for. We had our own apartment, and we were building our life together. But then, an unexpected fire in the neighboring unit turned our lives upside down. Our apartment was damaged, and we were suddenly homeless. That's when Eleanor stepped in. "Why don't you two stay at our place?" she had offered. It seemed like a good solution at the time. David was relieved, and honestly, so was I. But I didn't realize the price I'd have to pay for that help. Living with David's parents was challenging from the start. Eleanor had always been polite, but once we moved in, her true colors showed. She criticized how I did the laundry, how I cooked, even how I decorated our room. It felt like she was constantly watching and judging me. David, on the other hand, seemed oblivious to it all. He was happy to be back in his childhood home, and I think part of him enjoyed being taken care of by his mother again. I tried to talk to him about how I felt, but he just didn't see it. "She's just set in her ways," he'd say, or, "You know how moms are." But Eleanor wasn't just any mom. She was a mom who made it clear I wasn't good enough for her son. Despite the tension, I tried to make the best of the situation. I thought that if I could just prove to Eleanor that I was a good wife, a good person, she would accept me. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. Her house, her rules. Looking back, I wonder if I was naive to think I could win her over. Maybe I should have pushed David harder to move out, to find our own place again. But I didn't, and here I was, stuck in a house where I wasn't wanted, preparing to be left behind while they all went on a family trip without me. As I closed the closet door on the suitcase, I realized that this was more than just about a missed trip. It was about finding my place in this family, or maybe realizing that I never would. I needed to figure out what my next move was, for my own sake. Sitting alone in the house, I began to reflect on the escalating tensions with Eleanor. It wasn't just the snide comments or the constant criticism. It was the way she made me feel like I didn't belong in my own home. My efforts to be a good wife and daughter-in-law seemed to vanish into thin air. never enough to please her. I thought back to the countless evenings spent in silence after another of Eleanor's remarks. Sometimes it was about how I arranged the living room or the way I spoke. Other times it was more personal, like questioning my career choices or why David and I hadn't started a family yet. Each comment was a subtle jab, reminding me that I wasn't living up to her standards. David's reaction, or lack thereof, hurt the most. He always seemed to find a middle ground, trying not to upset either of us. But in doing so, he often sided with his mother. I understood his difficult position, but I couldn't help feeling abandoned. "She's just worried about us," he would say, trying to justify her behavior. But it felt like a betrayal every time he failed to stand up for me. I kept myself busy with work and household chores, partly to avoid confrontation and partly to prove my worth. I worked part-time at a local supermarket, a job that Eleanor deemed unambitious. But I liked it. It gave me a sense of independence and a break from the tense atmosphere at home. Yet, no matter how hard I worked or how much I tried to keep the peace, it was never enough for Eleanor. Her house was her kingdom, and I was merely an unwelcome guest. It was a constant struggle, trying to maintain my identity while being overshadowed by her presence. I remember one particularly harsh weekend. I had just finished cleaning the entire house, a task that Eleanor usually criticized. Expecting another round of complaints, I was surprised when she walked in and said nothing. I thought maybe, just maybe, I had done something right. But then, as I sat down with a cup of coffee, she appeared out of nowhere. "Jessica, your cleaning is too sloppy. You need to spend more time on it and put some gratitude into it for your hardworking husband. As his wife, it's your duty to support him." Her words stung, and I felt my efforts crumble under her scrutiny. I tried to argue, to defend myself, but it was useless. Eleanor had made up her mind about me, and nothing I said or did would change that. It was a lonely feeling, being in a house full of people yet feeling utterly alone. As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, I realized how much this situation was affecting me. My confidence had taken a hit, and I was constantly second-guessing myself. I knew something had to change, but I wasn't sure what or how. I just knew I couldn't keep living under Eleanor's shadow, constantly trying to prove myself to someone who had already decided I wasn't enough. I had to admit, the idea of a spa getaway with David had initially filled me with a sense of excitement, a chance for us to rekindle our relationship away from the pressures of his family home. We discussed destinations with soft giggles and whispered dreams, circling dates on the calendar that promised a respite from the cold reality of our daily lives. But my optimism had been a delicate bubble, one that Eleanor effortlessly popped with her intrusive demands. She transformed our intimate plans into a family excursion to celebrate her anniversary with George, David's father. My heart sank when David, caught in his mother's excitement, echoed her sentiments, claiming that a family trip would be just as enjoyable. The promise he'd whispered to me, that next time it would be just the two of us, felt fragile in his earnest reassurances. I agreed, though reluctance weighed on every word, and I threw myself into the trip's preparation, hoping that my efforts would at least be seen and appreciated. I delved into the organization with an energy that surprised even me. Perhaps deep down, it was an attempt to regain some control over a situation that had swiftly slipped from my grasps. I chose the sights we would see, the food we would taste, and the bed where we would lay our heads, quietly taking solace in the small victory that Eleanor seemed disinterested in the logistics. The day before our departure was a whirlwind of activity, of lists checked and bags packed. It was with weary satisfaction that I finally allowed my head to hit the pillow, mentally reviewing the itinerary one last time before succumbing to sleep. My alarm's call the next morning was a harsh one, screaming at me to rise and face the day. But when I stirred, the space beside me was empty, and an uneasy feeling curled in my stomach. I called for David, searched the house, and found only silence as my answer. Panic fluttered in my chest as I reached for my phone, trying to quell the fear with every ring. And then Eleanor answered, her voice echoing cheerfully through the line from the road, removing any doubt about what had happened. They'd left, just as simply as that, with no regard for me or the plans we'd made. My protests were met with mockery and a swift click of finality as the line went dead. So there I was, alone with my luggage and a void where my family was supposed to be. I could have crumbled, I suppose. I could have let the sadness drown me. But instead, I laughed, a sound of disbelief and resolve intermingled. I'll show them, I thought, anger and determination giving rise to a sudden plan. I opened my laptop and with a few clicks, booked myself a trip that mirrored the one I was supposed to be on, a room just for me in a luxury hotel I had wanted to visit, a table for one in a restaurant with glowing reviews. I packed my bag with an enthusiasm that felt both liberating and bittersweet. Stepping out of the house, I felt the sun on my face, a gentle encouragement for the journey ahead. I boarded the train, alone and unyielding in my decision to enjoy this time for myself. As the landscape whisked by, I could feel the threads of my former life loosening, the hold of Eleanor's world diminishing with every mile. I would find my happiness, with or without their approval. And if by chance I crossed paths with the family I had thought was mine, I would hold my head high. They might have denied me a place in their trip, but they couldn't take away my spirit or my joy. As the train neared the final station, I wrapped the shawl tighter around my shoulders, partly against the chill of early morning, and partly in anticipation. The solo trip had not been part of my plan, but it now felt like an act of quiet defiance, a reclaiming of my own narrative. I arrived at the quaint tourist town that was meant to be the backdrop of a romantic trip with David. The glaring absence of his company gave way to a newfound sense of independence. I let my whims direct me, browsing through shops lined with handmade crafts, enjoying the rich aroma of local coffee blends, and laughing with street performers that animated the cobblestone walkways. Every sight was seen through a lens of self-discovery, and every experience felt deeply personal. The weight of the agony caused by Eleanor and David's abandonment began to lift, replaced by a lighter, freer sensation that bubbled within me. I was alone, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lonely. The day waned, and the evening hues painted the sky, signaling it was time to check into the luxurious hotel I had impulsively booked. I had chosen the best, as a treat to myself for enduring the silent battles at home. As I approached the grand facade, a commotion at the entrance caught my attention. There, among the plush velvet and glinting chandeliers, were Eleanor, David, and George, clearly in distress. I tucked myself behind a decorative pillar, curiosity piqued. Eleanor's voice carried across the lobby, tinged with irritation, wondering aloud why they could not secure a room. Clearly, they hadn't managed to find an accommodation after leaving me behind. David spotted me before I could decide what to do. He called out, a mix of astonishment and guilt flashing across his face as he approached. "Jessica, we couldn't check into the room you booked," he stammered, and Eleanor followed, her face tight with barely contained rage. "Of course you couldn't," I replied with a cool tone I barely recognized as my own. "The reservation was in my name, and I hadn't checked in. Without my presence, the keys would remain unclaimed. A simple policy, but effective." Their predicament could have been a satisfying sight, but the joy of their discomfort was overshadowed by a sense of sorrow. This trip was a culmination of the disrespect and disregard they'd shown me since moving into their home. Their petty victory in leaving me behind now seemed like a hollow gain. Eleanor's temper flared as David tried futilely to negotiate with the hotel staff. Ultimately, the sight of them being ushered out by security was more pitiful than amusing. Eleanor vowed to find somewhere better, but her words sounded hollow and desperate. I turned from the scene that was once my family drama and approached the check-in counter, ready for a night of solitude in the peace of an elegant room. With my belongings in tow and my head held high, I stepped across the threshold into the next chapter of my life, one filled with possibilities and untouched by Eleanor's shadow. Turning back was not an option, not now, not after all that had transpired. Checking into the hotel felt like stepping into another world, a sanctuary of luxury and tranquility that seemed almost surreal against the rough fabric of recent events. The room I was escorted to boasted grand windows, an opulent bed, and a balcony that offered a breathtaking view of the setting sun. Alone, I unpacked my suitcase, each article of clothing a reminder of the journey I had embarked upon, both physically and emotionally. I decided to explore the hotel, and as I walked through the elegant corridors, I could feel layers of stress peel off with every step. By the time I returned to the grand lobby, I was transformed, no longer the cast-aside wife, but a woman on an adventure of her own making. As I lounged on a plush sofa, savoring my newfound peace, I overheard a hushed conversation that snatched at my attention. A pair of women discussing a harrowing tale about a nearby hotel with a tarnished reputation. They spoke of thefts, strange noises, and an unsolved mystery of a past guest's untimely death. The details sent a chill across my skin, and I couldn't help but wonder if Eleanor, David, and George had stumbled into that very place in their desperate search for a room. Shaking off the unsettling tale, I made my way to dinner, alone yet content. The meal was sumptuous, each bite an indulgence that soothed more than just hunger. I was celebrating not the dissolution of my family ties, but my resilience, my strength to rise from the emotional quagmire that had threatened to ensnare me. Returning to my room, the night embraced me like an old friend, cocooning me in its velvet quiet. As I prepared for bed, my phone lit up, a call from Eleanor. They had found a room, she crowed, reveling in their small triumph. I bit back a warning about the notorious hotel, my instincts urging caution. But her laughter at my concern quickly trampled any goodwill. "Enjoy being regretful," she jeered before the line went dead. I could have persisted, could have tried to save them from potential peril, but my patience was exhausted. Eleanor had made her bed, and now she'd have to lie in it, be it in a haunted hotel or a bed of roses. I turned off my phone, severing the final tether to the chaos of my old life. That night, as I slept in a bed far too large for one person, I dreamed of freedom, a vast open space waiting for me to fill it with new memories, new laughter, free from the binds of family strife. And as the dawn began to breach the night's darkness, I knew that one chapter of my life had ended, and another was ready to begin. Morning light filtered gently through diaphanous curtains. It coaxed me awake with a gentle warmth, a stark contrast to the cold dread that had settled in my heart the night before. As I sat up, the previous evening's encounter with David and his family, and the later ominous phone call, replayed in my mind. After a leisurely breakfast, I ventured out again to savor this precious gift of solitude and exploration. I strolled through a nearby park, admired the art in a local gallery, and indulged in some light shopping, allowing the simple pleasure of making decisions solely for myself. As the afternoon sun began to wane, I returned to the warmth of my temporary haven. My mind dwelled on Eleanor's last call, the triumph in her voice as she described the hidden gem of a hotel they had stumbled upon, and my suppressed fears about its rumored dark history. I pushed aside the unsettling thoughts and decided to focus on my present, a reality filled with tranquility and escape from familial conflict. That evening, I dined at the hotel restaurant, where the soft tinkling of piano keys filled the air with melodies of serenity. It was there, amidst the quiet chatter of other diners, that my resolve solidified. I would not allow my newfound peace to be disrupted. Retiring to my room, I mused over the journey of self-discovery that had begun quite unexpectedly. It dawned on me how much I had sublimated my own needs, desires, and identity for the sake of fitting into David's family. They had left me behind, but in doing so, they had unwittingly set me free. And then, my peaceful contemplation was rudely interrupted by the chime of my smartphone. It was Eleanor again, her voice unnaturally bright as she told me about their comfortable hotel stay. Despite the shiver that ran down my spine, I kept my tone light as I recommended caution due to the eerie rumors. Her response was laughter, derisive, confident, and steeped in denial. One last time, the dawn of concern tried to rise within me to warn them of potential dangers. But Eleanor's flippant goodbye silenced my compassion. I was done being the woman who worried about those who had left her in the dust with little more than thinly veiled contempt. The sound of my smartphone powering down reverberated through the silence, like a door closing on that chapter of my life. No longer would I be the doormat for Eleanor's self-righteousness or the tension in David's divided heart. It was time to move forward, to find my place in the world where I could bloom unimpeded by the chill of familial disregard. Sleep found me easily that night, and it was deep, peaceful, void of the nightmarish scenarios that had threatened to haunt me. When I awoke, it was with a clarity and a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. It was time to leave, not just the hotel, but everything that represented my old life. As I checked out and stepped onto the train home, I knew without a doubt that I was journeying not just toward a place, but toward a future, crafted by my own design. The train ride back to what had been my home brought a cascade of mixed emotions. Despite the serenity I had discovered within myself during the trip, a sense of foreboding loomed over me as the familiar landscape came into view. I was returning to a place where my presence had become a point of contention, and now I was ready to face whatever awaited me. Upon arriving, the aura of the family home felt different, almost charged with an anxious energy. The light that spilled from the windows seemed harsh, a beacon that screamed of tumult rather than the warmth of a welcome. With every step I took towards the door, determination steeled my resolve. "I'm home," I announced, as casually as I could manage, pushing the door open. The reaction was immediate. My presence stirred the occupants into a frenzy of exclamations and finger-pointing. As the noise died down, Eleanor relayed the story of their nightmarish stay in a fearful, breathless torrent. They had spent the night in the very hotel that had been the subject of terrifying rumors, the same one I had warned Eleanor about. When she recounted how their belongings had been stolen, with the hotel staff dismissive and unhelpful, I couldn't help but wonder if their experiences were a direct result of their earlier vanities. David and Eleanor rounded on me, blaming their misfortune on my earlier inaction, their words sharp and accusatory. "If only you had told us more seriously to run," Eleanor seethed, while David's gaze carried the weight of disappointment. The blame was unjust and ironic. If I had been part of the trip as originally planned, we would have all avoided the appalling situation that befell them. When I pointed this out, David's temper flared, and with it came the words that finally broke us apart. "We're getting a divorce," he declared, his face red with anger and frustration. Shock took hold for a moment before I regained my composure. I moved to our bedroom and retrieved the divorce papers that had been, until now, a hidden safeguard, a silent acknowledgement of the potential implosion of our marriage. Laying them out like a final gambit, I watched as David's anger gave way to disbelief. "We'll handle this like adults," I stated, the calm in my voice belying the earthquake that had just shaken my world. David's feet were rooted to the spot, unsure, while Eleanor capered around him, emboldened as ever, pushing her dispirited son to cut ties with me. And so, the life I had known with David and his parents crumbled to dust. Before long, the divorce was final, and the page had turned on a painful chapter that had defined my existence for far too long. In the wake of our separation, Eleanor's glee was short-lived. Word of the events traveled through whispers and gazes within the community, tarnishing her image. No longer was she the matriarch of a revered household. She became a harbinger of discord. I packed my things and left without looking back, my heart an odd mixture of ache and anticipation. I accepted the finality of my departure as the house I had tried in vain to make a home faded into the background of my train window view. For the first time in a long while, I was master of my destiny. With the help of friends, I began rebuilding my life in my hometown, starting anew, free from the clutches of an oppressive family dynamic. I embraced my singlehood, reveling in the quiet freedom it brought, freedom to breathe, to exist, to be me without restriction or disapproval. Back in the town where I grew up, I took up a new job, reconnecting with parts of myself that had been long buried beneath the role I had played as David's wife. I was rediscovering who I was, reclaiming the pieces of my identity that had been chipped away by years of servitude to someone else's happiness. For now, marriage was a closed book, set upon a high shelf to be perhaps revisited in the far future. But in the present moment I was content. Content to let the tapestry of my life weave new patterns, ones that held the promise of hope, self-respect, and endless possibilities. The cool air of my hometown was a balm to my soul as I stepped off the train. After the tumult of the past few days, the familiar sights and sounds wrapped around me like a comforting embrace. I had come full circle, returning to the place I had once been eager to leave, seeking new adventures. Now it offered the promise of a fresh start. I moved into a small apartment downtown, A humble space, but it was mine, and the privacy felt like luxury after years under Eleanor's scrutinizing gaze. My new job, secured through a friend's referral, was a role at a local nonprofit, a stark contrast to the part-time supermarket position that Eleanor had looked down upon. In the evenings after work, I would walk along the riverbank, the flowing water mirroring the thoughts racing through my mind. I reflected on my marriage with David and my interactions with his family. There was a time when I doubted my actions, when Eleanor's comments made me second-guess myself. But here, in the solitude of nature, I found a sense of inner peace. I wasn't the woman Eleanor had painted me to be. I was resilient, capable, and now truly free. I reconnected with old friends, and the sense of belonging they provided was restorative. We shared meals, stories, and laughter, a stark contrast to the forced dinners at Eleanor's table. With each passing day, the hurt diminished, and in its place grew a newfound sense of self-confidence. As weeks turned into months, the pieces of my new life fell into place. The job was fulfilling, offering a sense of purpose that extended beyond the paycheck. The work I did mattered, and I felt valued, a stark contrast to the feelings of inadequacy I had endured for so long. Word reached me at times about how things were faring in my old life. David, who had been so determined in his decision to divorce, seemed lost without the woman he had once deemed unworthy. Eleanor's reputation had suffered greatly, and her social circle had dwindled. The schadenfreude I expected it to feel never materialized. Instead, I felt a profound sense of relief that I was no longer entwined in their narrative. My evenings were spent on hobbies that had been neglected, reading books, painting, and attending local theater productions. I dove into these activities with gusto, savoring the joy they brought with a childlike delight I hadn't felt in years. Eventually, the inquiries came. Well-meaning friends and family nudged me towards the dating scene, but I was content to remain single. The scars of my marriage and subsequent divorce had healed, but they had taught me invaluable lessons about love, respect, and most importantly, the strength of my own spirit. So, as I closed the door on the past and looked to the future, I did so with a heart full of hope. The road ahead was unpaved and uncertain, but it was mine to traverse, laden with opportunities yet to be discovered, dreams yet to be fulfilled, and a chance at happiness that was entirely my own. I allowed myself one last look back, not in regret but in acknowledgement of all I had overcome. Then I turned away, striding confidently towards whatever tomorrow would bring, knowing that whatever it was, with my resilient heart and my unyielding will, was ready to meet it head-on.
My name is Julia Anderson. I've been married for 4 years and have a 2-year-old daughter. My husband works at a general hospital, and I thought we had a good relationship. But was I the only one who thought so? One day, while my husband was off to work, a woman stormed into the house. My daughter was out with her grandparents at an amusement park, and I was home alone. I had never seen this woman before, but she greeted me with a bright smile, and since she seemed nice, I thought it might be okay to let her into the house. As I made coffee and we started chatting casually, the conversation took an unexpected turn. Please break up with him. Stunned by her sudden demand, I couldn't grasp what she meant. When I asked her to explain, she burst into tears. I'm dating Ryan. I love him so much. Dating. You mean it's serious? Yes, I can't live without him. Please, let him be with me. I can't just agree to that suddenly. I had no idea he had a girlfriend. How could I know if that's true? I need to talk to him first. Please don't say that, just break up with him. It's not that simple to just break up. You mean you won't break up with him? Whether it was her overwhelming emotions or the fact that the conversation wasn't going her way, she attacked me, repeatedly striking my face with a coffee cup. Coffee splashed everywhere, staining the carpet, and I was increasingly covered in blood. I thought she was going to kill me. Just when I thought that, she seemed to snap back to reality, dropped the coffee cup on the floor, and left the house. As she walked out the front door, I rushed into my car and drove to the hospital where my husband worked. Despite the pain all over my body, I managed to get to the hospital and rasped out, "Please, call my husband." The nurse, shocked, replied, "There's no doctor by that name here," and took me to the examination room. I was asked something by the doctor, but all I could think about was that my husband was not there. My husband is Ryan Anderson. He should be in surgery. Even so, the response I got was, "There's no Dr. Anderson here. There never has been." What then? At that point, I passed out. It seemed I had a dream while unconscious. It was as if I was looking back on my life. My parents were wealthy, and I never had to worry about money as a child. After graduating from university, I worked as an employee. It was during that time, at a mixer thrown by a friend, that I met my husband. At the time, my husband was in his first year of residency, and his salary was very low. He would apologetically say he had no money when we went on dates. I was working, and if I ran out of pocket money, I could just ask my parents for more. So, I always paid for our dates. "Sorry, I'll be able to cover the dates soon. Don't worry about it. I work, and money is not an issue for me." But years passed, and he remained poor. His parents were poor, and I couldn't even imagine their level of living. After we got married, he sent money to his parents every month. I suggested living together to ease their life, but he refused. "No, my mom and dad like their house." "Why?" "That house is quite old." "For you maybe, but for my parents, it's a house of memories. They've lived there since their newlywed days. And that's where our family history is etched." In the end, my in-laws never moved from their old house. And most of my husband's salary went to them. I couldn't rely on his salary. "Sorry, my parents are poor, so I have to give most of my salary to them. That means we really have little for ourselves." I never realized how strange it was. And I even felt proud of my husband for supporting his parents. When I told my parents about this, they were impressed by what a great person he was. So, I never doubted he was a wonderful person. But the truth was, life was hard, and for the first time, I experienced having no money. When I consulted with my parents, they decided to help out of love for their daughter. But telling my husband would hurt his pride. So out of consideration, I said nothing to him. I worked for him, pleaded to my parents for him, and did everything I could for him. I thought I was happy. Everything was for my husband. Yet, one day, a woman came and I was shattered. Completely, both body and soul. When I regained consciousness, I was apparently crying. The futon was wet, and tears streamed down my cheeks. I thought, was that a dream? It felt so real. It was like a dream telling me that my past self had been betrayed. If not for that, I might never have admitted to being betrayed. It was betrayal, that woman was his mistress, and I had been deceived all along. The worst. For 4 years. Even before we married, so 5 years. I have been deceived all along. He wasn't even working, so sending money to his parents was also a lie. I involved my parents and was just being used by him. And yet, I never realized it. I was a clown. The agony welled up, and I felt a pain in my chest as if being stabbed with needles. I could do nothing about this torment. My husband appeared, nonchalant as if nothing had happened. Why has it come to this? I couldn't sort out my feelings, let alone tell him the truth. If I did, our relationship would be over. Part of me wanted to break up, and part of me didn't. A stranger came by, and while we were talking, she hit me. Why would you let a stranger into our house? What about Emma? Was Emma okay? Emma was taken to the amusement park by her grandparents since the morning. I see, she was okay. Good. How are you doing? Can't you tell? You were hit? Just bruises? It's not just bruises. I wouldn't be hospitalized just for that. Is that so? I was hit on the head with a dish. You're a doctor, you should know how serious that is. Yes, that's right. Ah. I have patients waiting, so I must go. My husband, unable to answer, left the hospital room in a hurry. I thought, I knew it, he's not a doctor. Liar. As I lay in bed staring blankly at the ceiling, my parents walked in with my child. My mother, not expecting that her daughter would be hospitalized while they were at the amusement park, burst into tears as soon as she saw me. Julia. Poor thing. It must have been scary, right? Mom. What happened to make it come to this? What exactly happened? Ryan's woman came. What? What do you mean? Are you saying Ryan was cheating? Hey, why don't you take Emma to the shop or something? Ah, yes, that's a good idea. My father, sensing this was not a conversation for a young child, asked my mother to step out. Once my daughter and wife had left the room, I began to tell my father everything. She came out of nowhere and said she wanted me to break up with him. But I couldn't just do that, and I told her it wasn't that simple. Maybe she got angry because things didn't go her way. She suddenly started hitting me. And with a coffee cup, she hit me on the head. With a coffee cup? Yes. It seems my brain is okay, so I'll be fine. But I will need to stay in the hospital for a while. So, I'm asking you to take care of Emma. That's fine, but what are you going to do from now on? What will I do? Are you going to break up with Ryan? I don't know what to do. Dad, what should I do? If it were up to me, I'd want you to break up. He's put you in danger. And with that kind of woman involved, who knows what she could do to Emma? Ah, you're right. I should think about Emma. There have been too many lies. That's right. Thank you, Dad. I will get a divorce. Good, then leave the rest to me. It wouldn't be fun to just break up without making a point. Thinking deeply, my father said he was going to the shop and left the room. Until my discharge, my husband did not visit. And my parents and I steadily prepared for the divorce. As the day of my discharge approached, I was determined to get a divorce. Furthermore, I became increasingly resentful towards my husband, who hadn't visited even once and hadn't even asked about our daughter. Despite this, I decided to return home for now, but when I got there, my husband was nowhere to be found. Moreover, it was clear from how neat the house was that a woman had been there. I thought, unforgivable. He had a woman in this house. I gathered some personal belongings and returned to my parents' home. At night, I received a call from my husband. He must have known today was my discharge day. And yet, instead of coming to pick me up, he had not replied earlier. Now, he was calling to ask why I wasn't home. Julia, you were discharged today, right? That's right. Why aren't you at home? I'm at my parents' house. Why are you at your parents' house? I wonder why. It's not a matter of I wonder why, come back home. Do you have any idea how worried I am? Worried? If you were worried, you could have visited me in the hospital. How can you say you're worried when you only visited once? I was busy with work, I couldn't help it. Oh, really? Well, I'll be staying here for a while. What? Without saying anything further, I hung up the phone. Then my husband came flying over. Now of all times. When he arrived, he acted as if nothing had happened and started to talk about taking our daughter and going back home. But my parents wouldn't allow it. Julia has just been discharged from the hospital. What are you planning to make her do by immediately taking her back home? What? If you were a doctor, you'd understand what this means. But there's something we need to talk about, so sit down. Honey, please take care of Emma. Yes. My mother took my daughter to another room, while my husband's smile stiffened. It's scary how angry you look. What's going on with both of you? There's nothing funny here. In this situation, it's you who seems to be out of your mind for laughing. What do you mean, this situation? Do you even understand why I was hospitalized? Yeah, some unknown woman came in, right? The issue is who that woman is. Huh? If she's unknown, then she's unknown. She said she was your girlfriend. That's why she asked me to break up with you. Huh? That must be some misunderstanding. Do you think I'd get hurt like this over a misunderstanding? No, that's a mistake. That woman must be crazy. Why would I be with another woman? That's impossible. A crazy woman? Yeah, that's right. She must be a stalker or something. I've felt like I've been watched recently, so I was trying to keep you safe from harm. But I never imagined she'd do something like this. Are you serious about that? Of course. There's no way I could be cheating. Really? So, about being a doctor at the general hospital, is that true? Of course. I'm a surgeon at the general hospital. That's strange. The hospital you work at is the one I was admitted to, right? What? When I rushed in and asked them to call my husband, they said there was no doctor named Anderson. They said there never had been. What? My husband looked perplexed and tilted his head as if something was wrong. If you really are a doctor at that hospital, why didn't you show your face at all while I was admitted? I hadn't told you, but I was transferred from that general hospital to another one a bit further away. I couldn't visit because I was busy every day. I hardly even came home. That's also strange. The coffee cup that should have been on the floor and the coffee stains that should have been on the carpet were all cleaned up. I thought it would be tough for you when you came back. So I cleaned that up myself. That's another lie, isn't it? It's not a lie. You lie as easily as you breathe. I'm telling you it's not a lie. What's wrong? Did getting hit in the head mess you up? I was told at the hospital that there has never been a surgeon named Anderson there. That's just because the nurse you asked didn't know. Not everyone knows who I am. Even though you're both in surgery? Could that really happen? It's a big hospital. Then show me your medical license. What? I don't have that on me. You don't have it? That's right. I have something like a license, but it's too big to carry around. No, you're supposed to carry something like a license with you. What? Here, like this. My father showed his smartphone screen, and my husband froze and thought for a while. Then he said, that thing. I keep it safe at home because it would be terrible if I lost it. My father swiped the screen a few times. Then he showed the screen titled Medical Qualification Verification Search. It seems you're not there. That means you're a fake doctor. That must be just a registration error. What nonsense are you spouting? If it's a registration error, how can you work at a general hospital? Wouldn't the hospital check whether you're a real doctor? No. It really is a registration error. These things happen. Dad, aren't you unfamiliar with IT? After all, it's humans who do the registering. These things happen. How far will you go in denying it? Then tell me about the money you've been sending to your parents. I've been hearing all these great things, but perhaps that's a lie too? That's not true. It's all real. Is that so? I've had you investigated, and it turns out you attended school. Through correspondence for both high school and college. I was told it was a famous university's medical school, but it was completely different. A correspondence school that no one knows, and you were almost a shut-in. At some point, your mother, fed up with your inability to do anything, tried to make you work a part-time job, but that didn't go well either. Since then, you've given up on working. Though you said you worked, it lasted only about a week. Is that so? I was shocked by these new facts, and as I looked at my husband, his face turned from pale to red, like a traffic light. Your parents continued to work for your sake, and eventually, your father passed away from the stress. Yet, you refused to leave your room. Later, in place of your father, your mother worked desperately. But her income was low, and life became more difficult. Yet she worked hard, came home, cooked, and collapsed into bed every day. Even seeing your mother like that, you never changed, never left the house. At 25, thinking that you couldn't go on like this and would end up alone in the future, you decided you had to marry. You looked for a woman who would support you and attended a mixer. That's where you met Julia. You lied about being a doctor, deceived her, and succeeded in marrying her. How can you say such things? Even if you're my father-in-law, that's defamation. Then my father took out an envelope marked Detective Agency. This envelope contains an investigation report about you. Everything I've just said comes from that investigation. How can you say it's true? The investigation could be wrong. Even the most capable detective can't uncover every detail of a person's past. My father took out his smartphone again and tapped the screen. The voice that came from the phone was my mother-in-law's. That boy has never worked a day in his life. He got married, and it seems he's getting by somehow, so I'm finally relieved. Sending money home? Never happened. Not once since he got married. He's never worked, so it must be Julia's earnings that are keeping them going. There'd be no way to send money home. Stop it. Detectives might not know your past, but surely your own parents would? I've heard a lot, and they told me just what the detectives did. And that there has never been any money sent home. Wow, I was surprised. You've deceived not only Julia and us, but even your own parents. My husband turned pale and trembled. It seemed like a complete knockout, but my father did not ease up on him. Now, shall we get to the main point? The main point? It seems you have a mistress, not a stalker. No, that's not true. She's a stalker. No matter how much you insist, it's useless. It's all written in the investigation report. Surely, she must be in cahoots with the detective. Is that so? Then how will you explain this? My father pulled several photos from the envelope. They showed the woman who hit me walking arm in arm with my husband. Both of them coming out of a hotel. And the two of them looking outside from the woman's apartment. There were too many scenes just like these. How will you explain this evidence? That woman is crazy. She kept coming on to me persistently. So, I promised Julia I wouldn't get close to her. And was just trying to keep the woman appeased. Is that so? The only person I love is Julia. Ignoring my husband's desperate attempts to explain, my father stood up and opened the door to the next room. Out came Michelle, the mistress who had hit me. Ah. Michelle. Why are you here? Why? Why are you here? You said we were going to get married, right? Yet, you call me a stalker? You always said your love for your wife was fading. And that you wanted to get back together? No, You said you were a doctor, that you were a resident with no money, right? That your wife took all your salary, so you had no money. That's why I've been helping you out with what little salary I get. And yet, you weren't even a doctor, nor did you have any intention of leaving your wife. I believed you and confronted your wife. That's going too far. If I hadn't done that, I'd still be deceived by you. Michelle, do you really want to marry this man? Of course. I've been with him for a long time and decided to live for him. No, it's not true. I never intended to leave Julia. How cruel. You don't want to leave your wife? So everything you told me was a lie? No, it wasn't a lie. I was serious about that. But it's also true that I don't want to leave my wife. That's unacceptable. I even gave you pocket money. You said you'd pay me back once your residency was over and your salary increased. You asked me to bear with it for now. That's true, but if being a doctor was a lie, how were you planning to pay me back? Well, I thought Michelle would understand. Understand what? Maybe, if I said I got fired as a doctor, it would somehow work out. So you were planning to deceive me again? Continue to be with me as a mistress while staying married to your wife? Don't think of it that way. It's better if we just enjoy our time together without thinking about marriage. I wanted to get married. I wanted to be your wife. Marrying you means divorcing Julia. Doing that would mean I can't access Julia's inheritance. She's a wealthy heiress. Staying married to her is much more profitable than marrying you. Ah, I see. So that's why you married Julia, with all those lies. The worst. To think it was all for my father's inheritance from the start. No, that's not it. It's just sophistry to convince Michelle. Sophistry? So you do prefer your wife over me? Michelle, let me ask you again. Even now, do you still want to marry this man? Of course. No matter how many times you ask, my feelings won't change. Well, that's good to hear. Then here's the divorce paper. Julia, Ryan, sign it. What? No, I don't want a divorce. Whether you sign it now or later, it'll happen. I can hire a lawyer. This is. I picked up the pen and wrote down my name. Now it's your turn. My father placed the divorce paper in front of my husband. And although he resisted, he agreed to the divorce. Now, this is next. The marriage certificate. Even if you submit the divorce paper, you can't submit the marriage certificate right away. You have to wait until the divorce is recognized. That's about 2 weeks. But if I let you two write the marriage certificate after becoming a couple, this man might not write it. So, sign now. This is. You've already signed the divorce paper. No matter how much you resist, the result will be the same. With trembling hands, my husband signed the marriage certificate. And Michelle signed it happily. Now you two are married. Congratulations. What a situation. I was managing everything so well until now. From now on, you are mine alone. Ryan, I will be claiming compensation and child support. What? But I don't have any money. Whether you have money or not, it's only natural to claim it. After all, you had a mistress. It costs money to raise Emma. That's not fair, Father. Aren't you wealthy? You have more than enough, even without taking from a poor man like me. That's a different matter. If you don't have money, borrow it and pay in full. In full. How much will it be? Emma is only 2 years old. You'll pay until Emma graduates from university, for the next 20 years. Pay $500 each month. You can calculate how much that will be. How am I supposed to borrow that much? I'm unemployed. Who would lend to me? There are plenty of places that will lend to you. Borrowing isn't only about going through reputable sources. That's something for you as a couple to figure out. And Michelle, be prepared because I'll be billing you too. Yes. Since I'm getting married, I'll pay properly. What should I do? Michelle, you pay my share. Ryan, if you have debts, you have to work. Maybe this will finally motivate you to start working. Then you can live a human life. That's right. Michelle, you're something else. Maybe you're better for this man than anyone. Ryan, this might be your last chance for rehabilitation. Work hard and pay it back. But I don't want to work. Well, that's the end of it. You can go home now. No, there's still more. What about the division of assets? The house and car. And other household appliances. I'm entitled to half. You've hardly contributed to the living expenses all this time. The little you did contribute sometimes was money you received from Michelle, wasn't it? You think you could buy a house or car under those circumstances? Everything was bought with money my father helped us with. So the house and the car are my father's. There's nothing for you. That's ridiculous. What about clothes, suits, shoes? Those were also bought by my father, so I'll have them disposed of. Why even those? Just buy them again. It's not a joke, you know. Some of those suits cost thousands of dollars. Give it up. It's your fault for not working. Besides, you've been lying all along. Now you'll have to straighten up for her. Ah, what a situation. Don't worry, I'm here for you. I'll support you so you can work properly. But I won't let you cheat ever again. Michelle said this with a creepy smile. Ryan, oblivious to Michelle's demeanor, was slumped in shock. Later, Ryan moved into the apartment where his mistress lived, but was unable to borrow money as he had hoped. So, Michelle borrowed the money in her name and paid it off in one go. But this was the beginning of hell for him. Michelle, who had always been kind no matter what, revealed an unbelievable true nature. She whipped Ryan into shape for not doing anything around the house, arguing that a man who can't handle household chores couldn't possibly work. While teaching him every household task, she made him look for work. If Ryan didn't move as Michelle wanted, she wouldn't let him eat properly that day. He who does not work, neither shall he eat. That was her principle. Once Ryan finally found a part-time job, Michelle quit her job. Her reason was that she couldn't be sure if he was really working. So she drove him to and from work. Indeed, while saying he was going to work, he might have been messing around with another woman. She never took her eyes off Ryan for a minute, and he was deprived of any freedom. Moreover, she didn't give him any pocket money, and when he went to work, he had to bring a water bottle and a hot dog. The hot dog also had a red heart drawn over the sausage to mark Michelle's presence. Thanks to that, they are managing to make the monthly payments. So it's all thanks to Michelle. However, Ryan has become quite thin and seems to have lost his sanity. Meanwhile, I return to my parents' house and am living happily with my parents and child. Recently, I've been helping with my father's work, making my social debut and enjoying every day. On the other side of the video call was my sister, dressed in a glamorous outfit, smiling brightly. Hi, Ashley. Congratulations on your wedding. What are you doing right now? I'm in the middle of changing my outfit. She then showed her full outfit on the screen. It was exactly the same dress I had chosen. I was wondering what a wedding without relatives would be like. I'd love to see it. Pretending to be innocent, my sister was actually trying to one-up me. Okay, I replied. My sister looked at the screen and exclaimed in surprise. What? What's going on at your venue? I am Ashley. I'm 30 years old and work in an office. My fiancé, Jason, who is a year older than me, and I have decided to get married. Our common hobby is watching professional baseball. We met at a stadium, and he proposed to me on our way back from a game. The game was tense, with runners on base but no points scored. And they were about to start the lucky seventh-inning defense. But the enemy's attack in the seventh inning was unexpected. The enemy? That was my sister. Hannah, for years my junior, certainly has a pretty face, prettier than mine. She has a slightly warped personality. She always wants to imitate me, always has. Whether it's club activities, clothes, or hairstyles, she copied everything about me. Thanks to her pretty face, whatever she does seems to suit her better, making me feel like a degraded version of her, which is miserable. Moreover, she acts as if she was the one who made these choices before me. Even when I complained to our parents, they would somehow always take her side. We get along as sisters. But there have been times when I've felt bitter about how adorable she is. But I was really shocked when she started imitating me even in marriage. After going through steps like introducing each other to our parents and having face-to-face meetings, we finally started preparing for the wedding. We visited several venues, compared estimates and dates, and thought deeply about it. Just as much as predicting the starting lineup of our favorite baseball team. Thanks to our efforts, we found a place where we could hold the ceremony. On the anniversary of when we started dating. It felt like fate. Let's have our ceremony here. A few days later, I got a call from her. Hi, Ashley. I've decided to get married too. Really? Congratulations. I genuinely congratulated her. She laughed happily. Since you're getting married, I thought I should too. I rushed my boyfriend into proposing. Really? Is it okay for her to get married just because I am? As I was dumbfounded, she said. And guess what? The date of the wedding ended up being the same as yours. What? It's like, the date you guys chose is a really good day, right? We thought we'd take advantage of that too. A really good day. It was, but that's not why we chose it. We decided to hold our ceremony on our anniversary. There are other good days, aren't there? Why would she do something so unreasonable? What about the guests? Huh? Why not just have them come to mine? What? Because, it's more fun for the attendees if the main character is cuter. You couldn't possibly make it exciting like that, could you? Huh? That's why I've already contacted all the relatives to attend my ceremony. Well, I have to go now. See you. With that, she unilaterally ended the call. She's already contacted all the relatives. How quick. It feels like being caught off guard by a tag up after the third foul fly. If I contact the relatives now, all I can say is it's on the same day as my sister's. Those who receive the call will think I'm the unreasonable one and feel sorry for my sister. That would be the worst. Until now, it was just a slightly annoying level. But she has seriously invaded my territory. We have two options: change the date of our ceremony or proceed as planned. It's like either a change-up or a straight in baseball. I cried and apologized to my husband for my sister's unreasonableness. When I consulted with my parents, they said, "We want you to talk it out and resolve it with Hannah." But it seemed like they expected me to give in. I cried again, feeling frustrated and sad. To ruin the eldest daughter's wedding and be happy about it. They are no longer a sister or even a parent to me. My husband listened to me seriously. But, your sister always copies everything, right? If we change our wedding date, won't she just copy that and overlap it again? That's true. Now I'm sure of it. She would do that. If I painfully adjust the schedule and she ruins it again. The memory of our wedding would be summed up in one word: worst. I don't want that. If that's the case, there's no point in changing the date. Let's cherish our anniversary and proceed with the ceremony as planned. But, it will be a ceremony without any family or relatives attending. Let's think about that. Jason and I put our heads together. We decided not to change the wedding date. When I declared this, my parents panicked. They were horrified at the prospect of their two daughters competing for attendees on the same day. Think it over. It will bother the relatives. At least postpone it by half a year. You don't say the same thing to Hannah. It was Hannah who did this on her own. You both think everything will be resolved if I just endure, right? I won't do as you think anymore. It's my once-in-a-lifetime ceremony. That's not what we meant. My parents were flustered as I vented my anger openly. But soon they approached me with stern faces. Apologize. Neither Dad nor I meant any harm. It's disrespectful to your parents. What are they saying? If I were the umpire, such parents would be out. I'm no longer your daughter or anything else. Goodbye. Thus, I broke up with my parents in a fight. I didn't feel sad, but rather, I felt completely relieved. They're free agents now. When my sister heard about my breakup with our parents, she immediately contacted me. Ashley, what did you say to Dad and Mom? Both of them look really scary, and the atmosphere at home is awful. I told them we're not changing the wedding date. What? On the other end of the phone, my sister gasped. But all the relatives are coming to my side, right? Dad and Mom too. Are you okay with that? It's fine. Do as you like. Since I've cut ties with my parents, the relatives don't matter to me either. Wow, really? Well, let's both have a wonderful wedding. I find my sister's brazenness incredible. She's the type to cry foul when she's not even hit. The reason our sisterly relationship has been smooth up until now is entirely because I've been enduring it. I've been patiently bearing it to maintain our family. That might have encouraged her shamelessness. By the way, Ashley, what did you decide for the invitations? What kind of design? What color? Is the addressing handwritten or printed? I haven't decided yet. Really? Decide quickly. I want to use it as a reference because you have good taste. That means she's declaring she'll copy. Just as Jason predicted, she would follow me if I changed the wedding plans. Realizing how much I had been enduring, I felt tremendous stress from her copying habit. But wait. This could be an opportunity. An opportunity to stop unnecessary endurance. An opportunity to give a taste of their own medicine. To my troublesome sister and insensitive parents. I have a few options, but oh, wait, I'll send you the pictures. I deliberately decided to be kind to my sister. Unaware of my intentions, she rejoiced with a purring voice. Wow. I'm so happy. As expected, I can rely on you, Ashley. I thought, rely on me if you want. I can pull off a trick play or two as well. Since then, I've had no contact with my parents. The ties are cut. But I'm still in touch with my sister. Sure enough, she chose the same invitations I did. And she even had the decency to send one to me. As the wedding approached, she continued to probe. So, about your wedding? I responded properly. As the day drew closer, her inquiries became more frequent. The color of the dress. The type of live flowers. The male-to-female ratio of the venue staff. My irritation grew with every question from my sister, who wanted to know everything. Accompanying a message saying, I decided on this dress. Doesn't it look good? Was a photo of my sister wearing the exact same dress I had chosen. If she wants to copy that much, let her. For the first time since she overlapped her wedding day with mine, I called my sister. Hello? So, I made some changes to the wedding menu. What? My sister was surprised. Why? What did you change? I upgraded the meat dish. I also chose a better drink course and asked to add another appetizer. I see. What's it like? Do you have any photos? I want to see. Sure, but what will you do with them? I'll use them as a reference. Her use as a reference means use as a model, which means do the same thing. If you want to see photos, I can send them. But make sure to discuss it well with your husband. Changing the menu can significantly alter the wedding costs. You said before that you couldn't afford any more expenses. I know that. But if you and Jason can do it, so can we. Good luck with that. She insisted I send the photos right away before hanging up. I sighed heavily, and my husband, concerned, said, Why don't you stop contacting your sister? It's stressing you out, right? It is stressful. But I can't stop now. I've decided to give her a taste of her own medicine. If I give up now, I'll end up walking the same path as before. I can't let that happen. It's okay. Don't ask me to stop. This is a battle between sisters by blood. What? I will fight and I will win. This is our WBC, the Women's Bridal Classic, you fool. On the wedding day, Jason and I were nervous. There was the normal tension of heading into the highlight of our lives. And the worry about whether everything was really okay. But once the main event started, that tension blew away. The guests were all warmly watching over us. I was so touched that I cried. The reception started smoothly, and I was at the peak of happiness. I kept my smartphone nearby during the reception to take photos with the guests. Then, my phone rang. I checked the screen, thinking I couldn't answer right now, but the caller was my sister, Hannah. I hesitated for a moment but then moved to a corner of the venue to answer the call. On the other side of the video call was my sister, dressed in a glamorous outfit, smiling brightly. "Hi, Ashley. Congratulations on your wedding. What are you doing right now?" "I'm in the middle of changing outfits." She then showed her full outfit on the screen. It was exactly the same dress I had chosen. I was wondering what a wedding without relatives would be like. "I'd like to see it." "Show me." "Okay." I switched the camera to show the venue. My sister saw it and exclaimed in surprise. "What? What's going on at your venue? It looks like a cocktail party." "That's right. It's not a typical reception. We made it a paper attendance wedding party." "What?" When my sister decided to overlap her wedding date with ours. We judged that a normal reception would be difficult. Honestly, we were at a loss. But after consulting with the venue staff, they were very supportive. They suggested this paper attendance wedding party. It's not a formal reception but a casual party. We handle the opening remarks, the toast, and the closing remarks. The rest of the time is for mingling and recreation. We ask guests to cover the attendance fee, and we don't accept wedding gifts. The meal is buffet style. Normally, receptions serve a full course, which requires a lot of space on the table. This limits the number of people who can sit at one table. But with a buffet, we can increase the number of people around a table. More people at a table means we can invite more guests. The number of people we invite determines our budget. So the more guests, the larger the budget. And unlike wedding gifts, with a fee, it's easier to manage the finances. We decided to upgrade the dishes within our budget. The reason I can afford to be on the phone at the edge of the venue, even though I'm the main character, is that it's a casual party. I didn't know about this. I wasn't told. I didn't say anything. Why? If I told you, you'd just copy it. I don't want you to ruin this important ceremony any further. If I tell you, then I have to ask the bosses and relatives I've invited to not come after all. My sister was gaping, looking a bit pale on the screen. "That dress looks good on you." "It's the dress I chose." "Huh? Oh, yeah. Huh? Aren't you wearing it too? You said you were going to change into it." "I've already worn it for the photo shoot, so I won't wear it today. We're changing into our baseball team's uniforms." "What? We've invited our baseball-watching friends too." "It's going to be a blast." But that's nothing like my wedding." "Maybe so. Well, let's both make it a wonderful day. Bye-bye." I waved at my sister with a triumphant smile. It was refreshing. It felt like I had settled a muddy match. I returned to the mingling guests with a light heart. Later, I sent postcards to relatives announcing our marriage. According to relatives who called to congratulate us, our parents strangely avoided mentioning me on the day of the wedding. When asked if there was a fight, they replied, "That child is no longer ours." Oh. So I'm no longer a child of that house. Just what I wanted. I'll gladly discard parents who take my sacrifices and patience for granted. My sister was reportedly emotionally unstable during the latter half of her reception. She had been ecstatic as the center of attention until then. But after changing her outfit, she became fidgety and unsettled. nervously monitoring the staff's movements and the flow of the reception. She even asked if the food could be changed now or if anything could be cancelled. Utterly unreasonable. The venue staff must have been troubled. As long as my sister is imitating me, if anything goes wrong, she can say, I did the same as my sister, and escape responsibility. But this time, at the grand stage of the reception, that escape was not available because our receptions were completely different. The responsibility for upgrading the menu or changing the dress code, disregarding the budget, was all on my sister. She must have started searching for a realistic line in a panic, but it was too late. Trying to fix things in the middle of the reception, after half of it was over, was absurd. A relative who spoke to me said the food was wonderful. It was a special menu, tailored to match the dishes at my wedding party. With the upgraded menu, the cost of the meal alone must have been enormous. The cost of changing outfits, including dressing and makeup fees, must have added up too. It was like signing free agents without considering the budget of the team formation. And the result? Needless expenses piled up. Relations with her husband's family deteriorated, which affected their marriage. Like a relief pitcher who gets burned and gives up many runs. A marriage that starts under such conditions isn't likely to go well. They separated immediately after returning from their honeymoon. But my sister can't even return to her supposed safe haven, her parents' home. With me gone, the relationship between her and our parents quickly destabilized. She told me everything even though I didn't ask, probably in order to blame me. Divorce seems only a matter of time. Not sorry at all. If she finds someone else, I hope she thinks and acts on her own next time. After the wedding chaos settled, my husband and I visited his parents' home to greet them. We thanked his parents for their understanding about not having a traditional wedding ceremony and reception, but a wedding party instead. They surprised us with a luxurious cake they had prepared. The room was decorated beautifully with flowers. They warmly welcomed us, saying, "Well done" at the party, despite the fact that they couldn't see their son's big moment. Because of my circumstances, they were so kind. I was so grateful and moved to tears. My husband and I cut the wedding cake in front of the camera his parents had prepared. Our wedding cake cutting. It was a game where we had given up many runs to the opponent's lucky 7. But we hit a grand slam home run in return. A fresh start with the old family swept away. From now on, we will surely be happy. It really was the right decision to divorce you. You and your son are still as pathetic as ever. I make $200,000 a year, you know. It seems that my ex-husband just wanted to boast about himself. As proof, he didn't even try to ask about our current situation. Ah, right. I should introduce you to my current wife. This is Julia. He introduced his new spouse to me. What was he thinking? Ah, is that all? Are we done here? Bye then. Wait a minute. As I tried to leave, my ex-husband blocked my way again. Hey. Are you jealous because we look happy? Don't let your poverty twist your heart too. You'll only become more miserable. My ex-husband assumed I was unhappy. I was so angry that I felt sick. As I remained silent, he was about to say something more, but Steve interrupted him. Mom, why don't you fire this old man? What? My name is Kim. I am now 42 years old. I married Michael, a colleague from the same company, when I was 26. I continued to work after our marriage, but I quit my job when I got pregnant. Afterward, our son Steve was born. Once he turned 7 and started elementary school, child-rearing became a bit easier. Thinking it might be good to start working outside again, I discussed it with my husband. It seemed he had been waiting for this, as he agreed immediately. He probably thought it would help with our finances. But he began rushing me while I was job hunting. Did you find a job yet? No. Are you even looking properly? Any job will do, right? He seemed really eager for me to work. Moreover, while I was looking for a part-time job, he suggested, "If you're going to work, isn't it better to work full-time? Even if not every day, how about 3 days a week for 8 hours each? Working too long would take me out of your dependent coverage, you know? Just because Steve is in elementary school doesn't mean he doesn't need any attention. I get home early, after all." However, Michael suggested that since I could put Steve in after-school care, working full-time 5 days a week would be better if being a dependent is a loss. He really seemed to want me to work long hours. I had said I wanted to work, so I couldn't argue much. But I was anxious since I hadn't worked for many years. Even if I decided to work full-time, I wanted to gradually get used to it. Quitting because it's too hard after starting wouldn't feel right. For now, I decided to start with a part-time job of about 20 hours a week, assuming I would work full-time eventually. Michael was complaining that I should start full-time right away. But when I said I would consider it if my health allowed, he reluctantly agreed. I never thought he was so concerned about our finances. Honestly, I found my husband's interference in job hunting annoying, yet I was also pleased. It's better to live long-term with someone who thinks about finances to some extent, rather than someone who is indifferent. However, I would later realize that this perception was wrong. One day, a few months after I started the part-time job, I received a message on my smartphone. Wondering who it could be, I checked and saw a name I hadn't seen in a long time. It was my former colleague and currently a colleague of my husband. It had been a while, so I casually read the message. But what it said shocked me so much that I exclaimed aloud. "What? What does this mean? You must be joking. Long time no see. I saw your husband the other day, and he seemed really close to some woman. I thought it might be an affair, so I sent you this message." The message was informing me of my husband's affair, and it even included a photo. My heart was shaken. The photo clearly showed my husband, and he was arm in arm with a woman I didn't know. Of course, even if I knew her, being arm in arm would still be unacceptable. As I was shocked by the photo, another message came in. "This woman is actually the daughter of the department head. She's also an employee of our company, so she definitely knows your husband is married. They're really bold, aren't they? I wonder if this is just how kids are these days." From my colleague's message, it was clear she was enjoying this gossip. But I replied with a thank you and closed the messaging app. I had never imagined my husband was having an affair. However, thinking back, there were many signs. Especially since he had been pushing me to work more at a time, when child-rearing was not yet stable. Today, my husband was supposed to be on an overnight business trip. Probably, it was a lie to meet his affair partner leisurely. The next day, when my husband returned, I immediately confronted him. Although I knew it was better to collect evidence calmly if we were going to divorce, I couldn't pretend to be fine. "What is this about?" When I showed him the photo, my husband was surprised at first. But then he quickly regained his composure and became defiant. "Ah, I see. You knew. Well, it can't be helped. As you can see. Honestly, I was surprised because I expected him to make some excuse. The woman is the daughter of the department head. The department head is guaranteed a higher position in the future. I guess you understand from this? To put it bluntly, marrying this woman benefits me. She's younger and prettier than you. My husband looked at me as if I was stupid. I thought about apologizing and crying, considering our son Steve. So I had thought not to divorce him. However, how could I with his attitude like this? He showed no remorse for his affair. Instead, he blatantly compared me with his affair partner and said she was better. As I remained silent, my husband became even more emboldened. Well, that's the situation. I think I'll divorce you. It's a bit earlier than planned. But I was going to tell you eventually, so this is just the right time. And so, we got divorced. After being told so much, I couldn't say I didn't want to divorce him. It was better for my mental health to get a divorce quickly. Get compensation and end things. My husband paid the compensation at my asking price and transferred almost all his property to me. Naturally, I gained custody of Steve. For my husband, who was planning to marry the department head's daughter, giving away some money was probably nothing to him. In fact, when he was leaving the house, he left me with these last words. Well, do your best living in poverty. Raising a child by yourself, you'll never be wealthy. Unlike you, I'm joining the celebrities. The department head's family is rich, after all. We'll probably never meet again, but struggle at the bottom. It's unbelievable that he could say such things. Even though he has his own blood-related child. I felt relieved deep down to be divorcing such a man. Mentally I felt better, but everyday life was still tough. Even though I received compensation and property, I didn't have much savings, so I needed to work hard from now on. Living on just a part-time job was not possible. Eventually, I quit my part-time job and started working full-time. I felt sorry for Steve, but after elementary school, he had to go to after-school care by himself. Unintentionally, I ended up working full-time. And both my body and mind suddenly became very strained. The new job was unfamiliar, and I had to do all the housework by myself when I got home. Life changed completely from before, and the days passed by in a blur as I was too busy. Before I realized it, 7 years had passed since my divorce. But no matter how busy you are, humans adapt. Steve has become a middle schooler and can mostly take care of himself now. Because I've been busy, he has grown up to be quite a solid young man compared to other boys his age. He even cooks and does the laundry. Thanks to him, I've been freed from both housework and parenting. And for the past few years, I've had time for myself. Both my personal and professional lives are going very well. Now I can say it clearly, it was definitely good that I divorced such a man. If I had continued to be married to that awful man, I would never have achieved this life. However, one day while shopping at the local mall with my son, I ran into that awful person, my ex-husband, Michael. I hadn't noticed him, but he approached me. Hey, isn't that you, Kim? Long time no see. You've aged quite a bit. Is that something you say when you meet someone after a long time? No person with normal sensibilities would ever tell a woman she has aged. That comment alone showed me that my ex-husband hasn't grown at all as a person. I became irritated within seconds and responded tersely. What? You look pretty old yourself. I barely recognized you. Honestly, my ex-husband really had aged quite a bit. I hadn't seen him in 7 years, but it seemed like he had aged twice that much. His hair was thinning, and he had a pot belly, a complete middle-aged look. Talking to my ex-husband felt like a waste of time, so I said, well, long time no see. But you don't really need anything from me, right? So, see you around, and tried to walk away. But it wasn't going to be that easy. My ex-husband blocked my path and started spouting nonsense. Hey, don't be so cold. We're finally all together. Let's catch up a bit. I really didn't want to hear anything about my ex-husband's current situation. The only thing I would want to say is about the child support payments. He stopped making a few years after the divorce. Child support isn't my right, it's Steve's right. Yet, there he was, daring to talk in front of Steve. But my ex-husband didn't care about my mood at all. He started rambling about his own life, which I had no interest in hearing. I remarried after that. To the daughter of the department head in that photo. Oh, he's not just a department head now, but a managing director. And thanks to that, I've been promoted to department head myself. I'm definitely on the winning side now. Honestly, no matter how much my ex-husband has climbed the corporate ladder, it doesn't affect me, and I'm not envious. All I thought was, so what? I was even more annoyed that he climbed the ladder yet didn't pay child support. It's truly stingy of a winner not to pay a few hundreds of dollars per month. My ex-husband continued to boast, ruffling my feelings even more. It really was the right decision to divorce you. You and your son are still as pathetic as ever. I make $200,000 a year, you know. Ultimately, my ex-husband just wanted to boast about himself. That's proof enough since he didn't even try to ask about our lives. Normally, a parent would be interested in their son's life, but here he was. Not even speaking to Steve, who was right in front of him. Truly an awful father. Right. I should introduce you to my current wife. Hey. My ex-husband called out to a woman looking at clothes nearby. The woman came over to us, and I immediately knew who she was. I had seen her in a photo once. Yes. She was my ex-husband's new wife. This is Julia, my current wife. How about that? She's way more beautiful than you were, right? He introduced his new wife to me. What was he thinking? This woman was the one who stole my husband while we were married. I'm glad we're divorced now, but it was a shock back then, and I harbored resentment. There's no way I could have a good impression of this woman. Even a dimwit like my ex-husband should understand that much. But he must really look down on us. It seems he can't even comprehend such basic things. Is that so? Are we done here? I'm not free, you know. Bye then. I said my goodbyes with an extremely displeased feeling. Of course, I didn't even glance at the woman, much less greet her. Wait a minute. As I tried to leave, my ex-husband blocked my path again. Stop it. There's no point in hearing about your family. Hey. Are you jealous because we seem happy? Don't let your poverty twist your heart too. You'll only become more miserable. My ex-husband assumed I was unhappy. It's none of your business. I'm perfectly happy, so leave me alone. The biggest misfortune recently was you talking to me. Even though I said I was happy. My ex-husband didn't believe me and pitted my situation anyway. Well, happiness varies from person to person, but poverty isn't happy, right? Don't strain yourself. If a single, divorced mother with a child were happy, there would be no unhappy people. With that background, remarriage is impossible for you. I'm just worried as your ex-husband, you know? While saying this, the expression on my ex-husband's face was the exact opposite of concerned. He was completely mocking me. When I looked at his wife next to him, she had a smug, mocking smile as well. I could never be friends with this woman. She's the worst kind, getting pleasure from looking down on others. Right? I told you. You're much better than her. Be confident. My ex-husband was flattering his current wife, comparing her to me and praising her to the skies. Well, she did help him climb the career ladder. So he's probably buttering her up whenever he can. Truly the worst kind of man. You're really the lowest of the low. I can't believe you were married to her. His wife mocked me despite meeting me for the first time. That's the worst kind of behavior in a person. I wanted to leave because I felt like I might respond if I stayed any longer. But my ex-husband stood in my way, so I couldn't move. Just so you know, we're still in love. So there's zero chance of getting back together with you. Don't get any weird hopes. My ex-husband was under some ridiculous delusion. To think he believed I had lingering feelings after he caused our divorce with his cheating. And 7 years later, he still thought so. His head was too full of fantasies, and I was speechless. As I was speechless at my ex-husband's ridiculous fantasy, he seemed to think he was right. Hey. Shocked into silence? It's tough being a man in demand. With his thoroughly middle-aged appearance, what part of him was in demand? I was beyond angry, I felt sick. As I stayed silent, my ex-husband was about to say something more. But then, Steve spoke up. Mom, why don't we fire this old man? What? My ex-husband was so baffled by what Steve said. Steve seemed quite angry, calling his own father this old man. Well, that's perfectly fine by me. What do you mean, fire me? Do you understand what being fired means? I'm not someone your mom can just fire, you know? You're in middle school, right? You should study properly. My ex-husband even spoke condescendingly to Steve. It's one thing to mock me, but it's unforgivable to insult my beloved son. Just as my anger toward my ex-husband was about to explode, I heard someone calling me. Hey, what's going on here? A man approached as he called out, and my ex-husband's face froze. Why are you here? Mr. President. My ex-husband questioned the man in front of him. Why shouldn't I be here? I'm just shopping with my family. Are you saying I shouldn't be here? No, I apologize. I didn't mean it that way. I was just wondering why you, the president, were talking to my ex-wife. Ah, that makes sense. She's my wife now, after all. What? She's the president's wife. I can't believe it. Actually, I had remarried the president of the company, where my ex-husband works about 3 years after I was widowed. I became close to the president shortly after my divorce when he approached me while I was shopping at a supermarket. I had worked at the same company as my ex-husband, so I knew the president. My ex-husband had an affair with the department head's daughter, which led to our divorce, and then he married her. The president was well aware of this and, as a man, he seemed quite displeased by it. However, he felt he couldn't interfere with an employee's private affairs. That's when he spotted me at the supermarket and couldn't resist saying hello. I was surprised that the president remembered me, a mere former employee, by face and name, as I had been a receptionist at the company, which might have made it easier for him to remember. It seems your marriage didn't go well. But I'm sure you'll find someone much better soon. Mr. President, I'm glad you remember me. But you don't have to worry about me, I'm doing fine. At the time, I had been divorced for less than a year and was still putting on a brave face. However, the president, with his extensive life experience, saw right through my facade and offered kind words. They say divorce takes 3 times the effort of marriage. No matter how smoothly the divorce goes, it's exhausting. I haven't divorced, but when my wife passed away, I barely felt like doing anything. It's tough when a couple who once loved each other parts ways. So, there's no need to pretend you're not hurting. The president knew the loneliness that comes with the end of a marriage. Indeed, while I felt it was better to have split, I was also feeling a mix of loneliness and emptiness at the time. So his words really resonated with me. Talking about it might ease your mind. Feel free to contact me anytime. I'll always treat you to a meal. He said this and gave me his business card. I felt it was too forward to contact him for about 2 years, but as time passed, I found myself wanting to talk to someone again. Finally, I decided to reach out to the president. Despite his busy schedule, the president made time for me and treated me to a meal. When I was an employee, he was still a department head and seemed unapproachable. But having a meal with him revealed he was a genuinely nice man. Perhaps it was easier because I was no longer with the company. But soon the president and I became good drinking buddies. About a year later, he proposed to me with a serious look on his face. You're joking, right, Chris? Don't say things like that even as a joke. I thought it was a joke since he mentioned it while we were drinking. But the president was serious. At first, I just wanted to cheer you up after your divorce. But being with you really settles me. I haven't felt this way about anyone since my wife passed away. Honestly, you've been healing me. If you're willing, I'd like to spend the rest of my life with you. Please give me a day to think about it, I said and consulted my son. I don't mind. It's up to you, Mom. Decide based on whether you like him or not. Since there was no opposition, I decided to marry the president. To be honest, I liked him. I thought of him as a drinking buddy, but I also felt healed when I was with him. We healed each other, so there was no reason not to live together. And listening to him talk about his late wife, it was clear how much he had loved her. Every time I heard his stories, I felt fortunate to be marrying someone who could love me as he did. I even felt a bit jealous of his wife. Thus, we became husband and wife. The president treats my son as if he were his own. He had no children with his previous wife, but they get along so well that they seem like a real father and son. I am truly as happy now as I told my ex-husband I was. My ex-husband turned pale and trembled when he heard I had married the president. He probably never imagined that his ex-wife, whom he looked down upon as poor, would be married to the president. Dad, this man was mocking Mom. Fire him. Steve ruthlessly told on my ex-husband to the president. You fool. No, Steve. What are you talking about? We were just catching up. My ex-husband tried to cover it up, but it was obvious to the president. You tend to look down on others, even at the company. I think what Steve is saying is true. I've heard various bad things about you from your subordinates. I think it's time for an internal investigation, so be prepared. My ex-husband never expected that Steve's words would be taken seriously by the president, leading to an investigation into his misconduct at the company. He apologized. I'm sorry. I may have been a bit harsh to your wife. I apologize. Can you please hold off on the internal investigation? Despite the crowded shopping mall, he apologized, clearly desperate to avoid the investigation. However, this act was practically an admission of his wrongdoing. The president was not swayed. No, I'll proceed with it regardless. By the way, the executive director you are close to has also been receiving bad reviews. I'll thoroughly investigate both of you. Upon hearing this, my ex-husband's wife also apologized. Please, not him. Just this man is fine, but leave my father out of this. Hearing her words, my ex-husband immediately began to argue with her. What are you saying? Are you abandoning me? Don't mess with me. There are plenty of men like you. Of course, my father is more important. Their marital spat was indeed disgraceful. And we didn't want to be associated with such behavior. So we ignored the arguing couple and left the store. That selfish couple probably wouldn't last long after this. They had it coming. The president quickly organized a team the next day to thoroughly investigate the conduct of my ex-husband and the executive director. The findings were damning: harassment and verbal abuse toward subordinates, favoritism in personnel decisions, and demands for entertainments from business partners using their positions of power. These abuses had been ongoing for years. Using one's position to solicit personal gains was unacceptable, especially in today's age. As a result, both my ex-husband and the executive director were stripped of their positions and reassigned to regional branches. Probably, my ex-husband knew this would happen, which is why he had apologized in the shopping mall. He was aware of his misconduct. Knowing yet continuing such behavior made it even more reprehensible. His career was likely over. According to the president, both eventually resigned from the company. Likely fearing retaliation from the employees they had harassed, they chose to leave. However, their troubles didn't end with their resignations. They were sued by the employees they had mistreated. Disliked by most, their numerous abusive acts were well documented. And they lost the lawsuit, facing substantial damages. The financial ruin drove my ex-husband's wife to blame him, worsening their marital relationship, which soon ended in divorce. The frequent fights and his abusive behavior might even lead to another lawsuit from his wife for damages. Watching my ex-husband's downfall reinforced my belief in living a straightforward and honest life. Meanwhile, I was blessed with a child with the president. At 42, it was a high-risk pregnancy, but our baby was born healthy, bringing immense joy. Steve was thrilled to be a big brother, lovingly taking part in caring for the baby every day. We even talk about Steve joining the company in the future. Despite the challenges of parenting at our age, seeing our baby's sleeping face makes all worries vanish. I'm grateful for this new life and ready to face tomorrow with resolve. My sister is getting married? I don't care. The younger sister's comment sparked laughter from both our parents. You're ugly and a failure, you know? Really? It's pitiful that someone like you would be anyone's wife. Feeling something cool inside me as the three of them laughed. I realized just how much they disregarded me. I never had any expectations, but to be treated with such disdain. Do they really not care about me at all? Well, fine. If that's how they feel, I won't hold back either. The time had come to right all the wrongs I had suffered from my family. Ready to leave everything behind, I started taking action. My name is Kelly Morris, and I'm 30 years old. I work for a big tech. I have one troubling issue: my family. I have a father, a mother, and a younger sister, and frankly, our relationship is not good. I'm the only one who is excluded in the family. This didn't just start recently. My parents adored my sister Mandy, not me. Despite her being my only sister, I couldn't help but despise her. Mandy was born when I was 2. I don't remember much from that time. But I do remember how happy my parents were when she was born. Naturally, that's a normal reaction for parents. But what I couldn't understand was their behavior afterward. After Mandy's birth, my parents completely ignored me. Yet, whenever Mandy called them, they'd rush to her side. Eventually, I became a nuisance to my parents. "You're ugly compared to Mandy, our child, yet you have nothing good about you." And other hurtful words were hurled at me. I was young then and didn't fully understand, but as I grew older, I gained knowledge and began to understand what they meant. Desperate for their approval, I threw myself into my studies and sports. As a result, I advanced to national competitions with my badminton club and was accepted into a prestigious high school. I went straight into one of the nation's top universities, and after that, I was active in university clubs and got a job at a big tech. I've tried desperately hard, yet my parents have never once praised me. Contrary to me, my sister Mandy always liked to compare things. When I secured my job, she spoke mockingly. "You think working at a good company is everything, don't you?" It's not like that. I think various experiences are necessary. And that's why I was active in clubs during university. You don't get it for women, it's all about looks and style. You've never participated in a beauty pageant like I did at university, have you? Sure, you are cute. But that doesn't mean everything goes your way. I gave her a bit of a lecture. She then held her stomach and laughed, "Ha ha ha. You're really stupid. For women, as long as you're pretty, everything else will work out." What? That's not how it works. Don't you see it at home? I'm cute, so Mom and Dad love me so much. Why would you say that? Besides, both Mandy and I are their daughters. It's really funny how different we are as their daughters. Thanks to you, my self-esteem is through the roof. Thanks. Her words finally broke me. I had planned to commute from my parents' home after getting a job. But I couldn't stand being with my family any longer, and decided to move into the company dormitory. Since then, I haven't seen my family. If they contact me, I plan to respond. But there has been no apology from Mandy, and no messages from my parents. Normally, when their child gets a job and moves away, they would check in. "How are you doing?" or "How's work?" But even after 7 years, there's no contact from them. It's clear they are not interested in me. Despite everything, I'm currently engaged to a man. He is Steve Thompson, a senior colleague at my company. Steve was my mentor when I joined the company and supported me at work. Initially, we were just senior and junior colleagues, but 3 years ago, we started working on the same project and our relationship progressed. Our distance closed, and I began to see him not just as a senior colleague, but with romantic feelings. It seems he felt the same. One day, about 6 months after I started having feelings for him, Steve expressed his feelings for me. "Ms. Morris is no, Kelly. The time I spend with you really makes me happy. So, would you go out with me?" "Mr. Thompson. Please stop calling me Mr. From now on, I'd like you to call me by my first name. Can I call you Kelly too?" "Of course. Please let me call you Steve when it's just the two of us. Ah, gladly. Looking forward to our future together. Yes. I look forward to it too. And so, I started dating the man I loved. 2 years later, Steve finally proposed. Of course, I happily accepted, and that's how we got engaged. I want to marry the person I love and share countless happy moments together. I never doubted that we could be happy together. Since we were going to get married, I had to properly inform my family at least once. I decided to discuss this with Steve. Hey Steve. I've told you about my family, right? So, I'm debating whether to tell them about our wedding date. It's tough. Since we couldn't even greet them for the engagement, I would like them to at least attend the ceremony. That's what I thought. As he said, my family had already once refused to meet. Not just me, but Steve and I. When Steve proposed, he wanted to greet my family. However, both my parents and my sister firmly refused. We're not so idle as to spend time on such things, they dismissed it, and that was that. No matter how bad my memories with my family are, I at least want them to attend my once-in-a-lifetime wedding. I decided to first try calling my sister. As I hesitated to press the call button, staring at the screen, Steve spoke up, "Huh? What's up? That icon, is that your sister?" "Yeah, that's right. Her name is Mandy. Unlike me, she's cute." "Oh, right. Mandy. Wow, what a coincidence." Watching Steve get excited on his own, I was puzzled and asked, "What do you mean?" He explained with a smile. "Actually, there's a junior I was close with in college. I've invited him to the wedding, and I just met him recently. And he showed me a picture of his girlfriend." "What? Could it be that was Mandy?" "Yeah. Crazy coincidence, right? But maybe it's a different person. According to the junior, she's a good, family-oriented girl with a great personality. And I think he said she's an only child. It seems Mandy has hidden my existence and posed as an only child. While I was genuinely shocked, it wasn't surprising coming from her. Therefore, I decided to keep the fact that I am Mandy's sister a secret from that junior until the day of the ceremony. Meanwhile, I also had to visit my parents about the wedding. A week later, I was in my hometown for the first time in about 7 years, hurrying to my parents' house with heavy steps. The regret came immediately after I arrived at the house. My sister began insulting me the moment she saw my face, without any sign of surprise. "Huh, big sis, what are you doing here? Did you run out of money and come to mooch off mom and dad?" "That's not it. I came because there's something important." "Something important? Like declaring disownment?" That would be hilarious. At my sister's words, even our father and mother began to laugh out loud. Over their laughter, I spoke clearly. "I'm getting married. The ceremony is on the 30th next month, and I came to inform you about it." With that, the room fell silent. Then my sister burst out laughing. "Big sis getting married? I really couldn't care less. Wait a minute, it's a family wedding after all. By the way, the whole family is going to Hawaii that day, so we'll be absent from your wedding." "The whole family? What about me? If I can't attend the ceremony, at least let my fiancé greet you." "What? That's a waste of time, right? Mom and Dad think so too, don't they?" Following my sister's remarks, my father and mother began to laugh as well. "You're ugly and a failure, you know?" "Really? It's pitiful that someone like you would be anyone's wife." As the three of them laughed loudly, I felt something inside me cool and detach. I hadn't expected much from the beginning, but to be disregarded to this extent. Do they really not care about me at all? Well, fine. If that's how they feel, I won't hold back either. Turning my back on them as they mocked me, I simply said, "Understood," and left my family home. It had been 7 years since I last visited, yet my stay lasted only about 10 minutes. I hadn't anticipated such outright denial of my existence. But this only strengthened my resolve. I would make them regret casting me aside. Afterward, I asked Steve for help and steadily prepared for my revenge. To keep it from my family, I secretly informed my relatives about the wedding date and arranged for them to attend. Thus came the day of the wedding, a day prepared with revenge in mind. As a crowd of guests gathered at the venue, Steve, his parents, and I lined up in the reception hall. The hall began to buzz, and relatives asked, "Where are Mandy and her family?" Answering their questions, I took the microphone and began to speak slowly. "Thank you all for gathering here today for us. As you can see, my family is not present. I would like to discuss the reasons for this." I then confessed openly about my circumstances, how my family treated me over the years, and how they had refused to acknowledge my marriage or attend the ceremony, revealing everything. My family despised and looked down on me. And they didn't show their faces even on a day as special as today. So, I decided to tell all of you who know my family everything about them. My voice shook towards the end. Tears that I had been holding back welled up and ran down my cheeks. Steve placed his hand on my back and gently stroked it. As if a string had snapped, tears streamed down freely. After the reception, relatives apologized for not noticing sooner and expressed their intention to cut ties with my family, all asserting their support for me. After most had left, Steve, his junior colleague Keith, and I remained. Keith then spoke up softly. "I had no idea that Kelly, Steve's fiancée, was Mandy's sister. I'm sorry, I didn't know anything. No, I'm the one who should apologize for surprising you. This was all to vent my own frustrations. If you still want to maintain a relationship with Mandy, I won't stop you. No. I need to think." Mandy claimed she was an only child and boasted about how much she valued family. Yet this. "I'm sorry for causing you such trouble. Thank you for coming today." Despite Keith's apparent concern about Mandy, there was a refreshed look on his face. "I need to think it over," he had said, but perhaps he had already made up his mind. Later, my married life with Steve began. On a holiday, as we were enjoying a relaxed day together, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed Mandy, and it was Keith making the call. As soon as I answered, my sister began to yell furiously. "Don't mess with me. What did you do to Keith? So, he's told you something, has he? Did you orchestrate this? We were about to get married. And he said to me, 'I heard everything from your sister, I want to break up.'" Her breathing was rough, and she sounded utterly distraught, even through the phone. I struggled to suppress a laugh and slowly responded. "Do you know why he would say that?" "What?" "So you did investigate my boyfriend and spread lies about me because you hate me? Who goes that far? That's unbelievable. You also must have said unnecessary things to the relatives." "What lies?" "I only spoke the truth. At the wedding, I simply shared our family's story." "At the wedding?" "Yes. Since our family didn't attend, I explained to the guests why. I told them about how you all treated me, what kind of hurtful things you've said. Keith was very upset, you know? What? Why would you tell such a story? Of course it would make me look bad. That's why I told it. To make you regret how you've treated me. How cruel. I never did anything that bad to you. In her mind, the numerous insults she hurled at me weren't that bad. The fact that I shared these truths with others made me cruel, but excluding me was not? That's absurd. Before I knew it, I raised my voice in anger. Don't mess with me. I never did anything bad? How could you even say that? Do you have any idea how much you've made me suffer? My heart has been broken over and over by you. What, you? After ruining someone's love life, how dare you act so self-righteous? It's all karma. If you hadn't treated me so poorly, I wouldn't have needed to reveal anything at the wedding. And you wouldn't have been dumped by your boyfriend. Your past actions have come back to haunt you. I will never forgive you and your family. Go to hell, all of you. With that, I hung up before she could respond. And continued to ignore her calls, blocking them instead. Since then, it didn't take long for my family to fall into their own hell. Apparently, Mandy had been shouting in the office. Please reconsider. I won't break up, which led to reprimands from superiors. And cold stares from colleagues, eventually driving her to become a recluse. Even my parents faced criticism from relatives for their role in the fiasco. Becoming pariahs themselves. Having been doted on for having a beautiful daughter. They now lived a shadow of their previous lives. Only seen when my father ventured out alone to the store at night. It was all their own doing. They deserved to suffer. As for me, I was happily married to Steve. Since that day, many people have reached out to care for me. And even relatives started contacting me. Expressing my feelings and appealing to others showed that change was possible. Something I had learned firsthand. With this experience, I resolved to live honestly and openly in the future.